race fans, it's race day, top 5 with me, Frank 5. Richmond Raceway, short track Saturday night, provided a lot of drama on a very special day with a lot of drama for the playoff drivers about good finish, good points, all around needing to put together a solid night. And one team that hadn't won since the month of May put it all together for their 4th win of the season last night. Let's talk about all that went down in race number 2 in the round of 16. Number 1, Martin Truex Jr. picks up his 4th win of the season, winning last night's Federated Auto Ports 400, honoring our service members 400 race last night, winning it over his teammates Denny Hamlin and Christopher Bell, and then Chevy's Chase Elliott and Ford's Joey Logano. Martin Truex Jr. has been very, very consistent this season, and he's been very good at the short tracks recently, especially finally getting the monkey off his back 2 years ago at this track where he was able to finally get his first short track win. He's been very good this season, and he already had 3 wins this year. He won at Phoenix, he won at Martinsville, and he won Darlington on Mother's Day weekend, which was the throwback race at Darlington. However, he hadn't won since the month of May, since that Darlington race. They've been running very, very solid, but they haven't been able to put together the consistency and minimize the mistakes to have an opportunity to win. Well, last night, they had to overcome a lot. Right at the start of the race, Martin Truex Jr. was penalized for jumping the start. Now, he was moved up because Kyle Larson, who was supposed to start on pole, he had to drop to the rear because he failed pre-race tech twice. Truex jumped the start in the 11 car, but the 11 car was the control car. So Truex had to serve a pass-through penalty on the green, but thankfully he did not lose a lot, and he was able to pick his way through the field and get back to the top 10 by the end of Stage 1. If not, he got to the top 10 by the beginning of Stage 2. I can't remember. But he had a very fast race car. The lap time showed it. The speed showed it. The car was definitely with him last night, and he was able to work his way to the front of the field. He was able to get to the top 5 by Stage number 2. And then it seemed to be a battle between him and his Joe Gibbs Racing teammates in the final stage. They all certainly had the speed in their race cars. It all depended about which one was going to benefit on track position as well as a solid pit stop. Well, Martin Truex Jr.'s team didn't have the best pit stop on the first green flag stop in the final stage, but in the second pit stop, they were able to close, before the second pit stop, they were able to close in on their teammate, Kyle Busch, who was leading the race, and Truex was able to beat Kyle Busch up pit road, and then his teammate got a penalty, which I'll get to in a moment, but Truex had an 8.5-second lead over his teammate, Denny Hamlin, and like thinking, unless we get a caution, there was no way Denny Hamlin's going to catch the 19 car. He was gaining on him in the last few laps, but it made it a little dramatic, but it wasn't enough. It would have been nice if a caution had come out to give Hamlin the opportunity to ram down the 19 car, and they would have battled it out for the win. However, Martin Truex Jr. in the end had the better race car. This is his 3rd win at Richmond Raceway, and this officially locks him into the round of 12. You know, we've talked about all year long between who's the better team, whether it's Hendrick or Joe Gibbs Racing. Well, Hendrick was really good in the regular season. Gibbs was also good, but Hendrick had the edge. Now we've hit the playoffs, and Joe Gibbs Racing seems to be in the catbird seat. I will say right here, right now, they are the team that is hot. They have the momentum. Martin Truex Jr. had a great run last weekend at Darlington. He had a car capable of winning, but he had to overcome a pit penalty, but he worked his way back in the lead lap and got in a fourth place finish at the conclusion of the race. And jumping the start last night and winning the race, that takes a real team to put everything together and put aside the mistakes and capitalize when it matters the most. And Truex did that. He's locked up his 4th win of the year. He's officially locked into the round of 12. I mean, no doubt about it, folks. This guy is one of the favorites for the championship. Heck, you can make an argument he is the championship favorite right now. Yes, I know Denny Hamlin won last week, and when he wins, he gets hot and he starts to win more. But Martin Truex Jr. was the best of the Gibbs cars this year based on wins. So I feel like that Martin Truex right now should be considered the favorite out of Joe Gibbs, and probably overall. Kyle Larson's had the speed so far in the first 2 races. He just hasn't had the speed that the 19 team probably has. So it's a dead heat right now between Gibbs and Kyle Larson and his other teammate, our reigning Cup champion. But I believe that it's going to be a battle for these next few races to see who is the clear favorite before we get to Phoenix. But Martin Truex Jr., James Small, Joe Gibbs Racing Team, well-deserved victory last night. Number 2, the other Joe Gibbs Racing teammates of Martin Truex all had very solid nights. All in all, Gibbs had a perfect night last night. Denny Hamlin dominated the race. He led over 100 laps, 100 plus laps. I think he led 197 of the laps. He led almost 200 laps of the race. He won both stages, and it looked like he was a really good race car on the short runs. But as we got to the long runs, the speed wasn't really there, and he was complaining about how his car just wasn't right balance-wise compared to his other teammates. But he was able to close the gap late in the race. He did have to get through a lot of lap traffic. He got to within a second and a half to 2 seconds towards the very end of the race. I mean, again, if a caution had come out, Hamlin would have gotten a shot because everybody would have been down pit road for 4 fresh tires because they matter here at Richmond. But all in all, regardless, it's a solid night for the 11 team. They were able to get a good result. Christopher Bell, his teammate, he started the race looking pretty bad. He was down in 16th. The speed wasn't there. The handling wasn't there. But they kept working on making adjustments to that 20 car. He kept working his way through the field. And he was taking a little longer time to pit other than everybody else under green flag. He stayed out longer. Then when he would pit, he would fall back a couple spots. But as the run progressed, using those fresher tires to his advantage, he was able to pass guys. I mean, the speed, the 20 team, aside from last weekend, if they didn't have to pit late for the loose wheel, they would have gotten a top 5 finish. They have been very good. I will give them credit because I had them getting eliminated in the round of 16. That probably is not the case anymore, although next weekend is Bristol and anything's possible. But the 20 teams seems to have got their act together at the right time. And Christopher Bell put together a solid third-place finish last night. Now, as for the other Joe Gibbs car, Kyle Busch, he had a lot to deal through, especially after last weekend where he crashed out early, was angry in his post-race interview, saying, who cares, we get what we deserve if he gets eliminated. And he got faced with a big $50K fine because of what he did driving back to the garage at a little bit higher speed, and there were people moving back there, so he kind of put them at risk. But Kyle Busch was able to put that aside, and he had a very good race car last night. He had to overcome an early mistake. For the first pit stop of the night under the competition caution, he was called for equipment interference when his tire rolled into the pit box in front of him, the 77 team of Justin Haley, and he had to restart the rear. He kept working his way to the field, and he got to the top 10 by the beginning of stage 2, and then he kept working his way up and got to the top 5, and then by stage 3, he had the lead, and he seemed to have the car to beat. And we all know Kyle Busch is really good here at Richmond, but he hadn't won here since 2018 in both races where he swept. But he definitely had the speed last night, and it looked like it was going to be him versus Martin Truex for the race win. But on the last green flag pit stop, Kyle Busch got caught for speeding, his second penalty of the night. And I talked about you have to minimize the mistakes as a playoff driver, especially when you're below or near that cutoff line. Kyle Busch did not really do that last night. That pit penalty hurt him. He had to pit late and serve the passenger for speeding, but he was able to stay in the lead lap. And the other thing was, there weren't that many guys on the lead lap. He was still able to salvage a 9th place finish out of last night. A good result for Kyle Busch. He's 8 points above the cutoff line, but you left a lot of points on the table, and the speeding penalty just threw him off. So he's 8 points above. He's going into Bristol next week where he's really good at, but you know what? Sometimes the best drivers at Bristol don't get the finishes they get because of being caught up in some incidents that maybe they were part of or didn't deserve to be a part of. So they have a lot of work to do in the 18 team. The speed is definitely there last night, and we'll see how they can carry that towards Bristol. Number 3, drivers in the playoffs that needed to overcome mistakes and bad races and bad finishes from last week certainly got the job done last night. We talked about Christopher Bell and Kyle Busch. They were able to get some points back and move up further above the cutoff line. But the big winner last night was Chase Elliott, the number 9 team. After last weekend hitting the wall late in the race at Darlington after a cut tire after contact from the 20 car, he had to rebound last night at Richmond. And sometimes he's hit or miss here. He sometimes runs good, then sometimes he's not running well, like he's a top 15 car. But when he runs well, he has a top 5, top 10 car. Last night probably was the best car that Chase Elliott had ever had here at Richmond in a Cup car. Now, he's won here in Xfinity, but Cup, ever since he came here, it's been a challenge. Last night, he had a really good race car. Early on, the car moved up to the front. He got to second by the end of stage 1. Then he took the lead towards the first few laps of stage 2 on Denny Hamlin. It looked like those two were going to be battling out for the rest of the race because they were pulling away from everybody else. The speed was definitely there in that 9 car last night. Well, I think it was on the second green flag pit stop of stage number 2, Elliott came into the box, but Ross Chastain was right behind him. They made contact, and it damaged the left rear of Elliott's car, and he felt like he overshot his pit box, but looking at the imagery based on the NBC cameras, looking at his pit box, he was in the box perfectly fine. He backed up, and Alan Gustin said, don't back up, and he ran over the jack and ended up breaking the jack. They had a 36-second pit stop. That lost them a lap. But they were able to pass William Byron and Austin Dillon late in stage 2, and when the caution came out, Elliott was the first car 1 lap down. He got his lap back, and he was able to work his way back to the field, moving his way out. The speed was definitely there. The damage to that car from that pit stop, it probably cost them an opportunity for the win, most likely. But they were able to rebound and get a nice 4th place finish out of it and get some much-needed points after being 4 points above the cutoff after Darlington. After last night's finish, they're now 19 points above. That's not like you're officially locked in, but that's a good points margin going to Bristol, a track where he's been pretty good at. So I think the 9 team's in pretty good shape for the next few races. Another team that really needed a good run last night was Ryan Blaney. I mean, I know he had a good points margin coming in, but we all know that Ryan Blaney is not good here at Richmond. Well, last night was perhaps their best performance. They ran top 10 for them most of the night, then they fell out of the top 10. But then at the last lap, he was able to pass Austin Dillon and get his first top 10 at Richmond. Yes, Ryan Blaney finally got a top 10 at Richmond. Congratulations. So it was a good run for the 12 team. They come in now with a 28-point cushion going into Bristol, a track where they've also been really good at. So the 12 team's in pretty good shape as well. And Alex Bowman, who had to overcome pretty much a pretty bad race at Darlington. They came into Richmond where they won it earlier this year, even though it was in the daytime. They really didn't have a good car last night. They were able to scratch away with a nice 12th place run. They are, however, still below the cutoff line, but they were in a tie because one of the playoff drivers had an early incident, which I'll talk about in a second. But for the most part, some of the guys that didn't have the results they had hoped for last week were able to bounce back this week with some good points. So those guys were able to help their points margin over the cutoff for the next race coming up at Bristol, where we will slice it down and eliminate 4 people. Number 4, playoff drivers that did not execute last night. Boy, there were a lot of mistakes. I mean, I talked about Elliott and Kyle Busch. They had their mistakes, but they were able to overcome it. Bell was able to overcome a poor car. Blaney was able to score top 10 here at Richmond, one of his worst tracks. But other guys left hurt themselves last night. Eric Almirola had a good top 10 car. It looked like he was going to be in position to get a top 10 last night. But on one of the last green flag pit stops, he had to come back in and pit again because they didn't get the left rear tight. So they had to come in. They finished the lap down in the 14th spot. Not a bad result, but now he's 3 points above. And that's not comfortable, especially going into Bristol. Tyler Reddick, he seemed to have pretty good top 10 speed early on as well. Then he fell off and he finished, I think he finished 15th, 2 laps down. And now he's 3 points out. Not good for the 18. William Byron, I don't know what's going on with him. I mean, goodness gracious. Last week he had the incident early on with his teammate. He was able to fix it. He was able to get back into the top 10 before he cut a tire late. But last night, they were not the best car. They had a really bad race car last night. With all that happened. They had a poor handling car. They weren't able to keep up with the track conditions. They weren't able to adjust on it. They were just really bad last night. 19th place finish. He's now 18 points out. Pretty much in a must-win. Michael Mcdowell, he just had a lot of problems last night. I mean, goodness gracious. Didn't the dude have like 1 million speeding penalties? In honesty, he had 3 speeding penalties last night and finished in the 29th spot. He's now 38 points below the cutoff. He must win next weekend in Bristol. I mean, you did a good job winning the Daytona 500, but we all know you were going to be probably an early exit. So it's a tough break for the 34 team in general. But the biggest loss last night was Kurt Busch. They had the speed early on in the first stage. They looked like they were going to be battling it out with the 11 car and the 9 and the 19 and the 18 when they got up there into the field, as well as the 5 car. But on the first restart of the night after the competition caution, Kurt Busch had noticed that there was a little bit of low air in that left rear tire. The lettering was kind of fading. And then going to turn 1 while running on the outside of Ryan Blaney, Kurt Busch snapped around and hit the outside wall, and he finished dead last, only scoring 1 point. And his teammate Ross Chastain got top 10. The speed was there for the Ganassi cars. What could have been for Kurt Busch? And now, he's still above the cutoff, but he's in a tie with Alex Bowman. The reason he gets the tiebreaker advantage because he had the better finish last weekend at Darlington than Alex Bowman. If there's a tie after Bristol, it goes off of the best finish in race 1, and that would go to Kurt Busch. But a lot of points were thrown off the table because of Kurt Busch's incident last night. Very, very unfortunate. But Bristol's been a good track for him. He's a 6-time winner there. So I have no doubt that Kurt Busch can run well next week. He's going to do just fine, I believe. And number 5, last night there was racing, but yesterday was also about remembrance. 20 years ago yesterday was the tragic events of 9/11, where we always remember and we never forget. 3,000 people perished in very, very devastating tragedies, where planes crashed into the two twin towers of the World Trade Center. One crashed into the Pentagon, and one crashed into an open field in Pennsylvania after the passengers started to have a little, I don't want to say fisticuffs. They were able to prevent the pilots from crashing. The next target was probably Capitol Hill, so they crashed into the open field and they gave up their lives to save lives at the Capitol. It was a very sad day. I don't know where you were when the world stopped turning that September day. I was 2 years old. I don't really remember much. I was at daycare, according to stories from my mom. It was a very tragic day for America. But that day realized that we needed to be strong as a country, and we need to come together united as one. Whether you are Republican, whether you're a Democrat, we had to be united as one that day. And it taught a lot about how we need to be strong as a country with our patriotism, our pride, our resilience, our courage to stand up against any adversity that faces us. We are a strong country. And when NASCAR took the week off the following week to assert themselves, they returned September 23rd at Dover National Speedway, and sports brings people together. And that day at Dover brought everybody together with all the American flags, everyone chanting USA, USA, and singing along with the national anthem. And that day also began the day where drivers stood outside their cars, next to their cars during the national anthem, because in past days they would be singing in their cars during the national anthem. So this time it changed around, and they were able to stand outside next to their cars. And couldn't pick the better driver to win that day than Dale Earnhardt Jr., who had gone through a lot, no one with Dale Sr., his father dying in the Daytona 500. Comes back to the track in July and goes on to win that race. And he's able to help America cope with the 9/11 tragedy by winning the next race, where they return at Dover. It was a very, very special time where sports bring us together, especially to unite all of us together. And last night, the energy of the crowd at Richmond was phenomenal. They were all waving their American flags. Everybody was like chanting USA, USA. We had a fire truck and 2 police cars in the opening pace laps to honor all those people. And we honor all the men and women that gave up their lives to save people in 9/11. We honor our policemen, we honor our firemen so much for their courageous acts that day. And it's a tough time to remember, but we always have to remember 9/11, and we can never forget. And kind of a little bit of NASCAR fit into 9/11 last night, because in the Xfinity Series race, Noah Gragson picked up his second win of the year in the 9 car, holding up the number 11 of Justin Haley. 1-2 finish 9/11. And then in the NASCAR Cup race, Chase Elliott was battling Denny Hamlin for the lead, and they were at one point, Elliott was in front, Hamlin was in second, 9/11. Pretty special, huh? Pretty special. And I'm patriotic about my country. I love our country. And 9/11 brought us all closer together. We will always remember. And we will never, ever, ever forget. So, that is it after last night's race, as we have officially concluded the second race in the round of 16. There is one more race to go, and it's at the Bass Pro Shops NRA Night Race in Bristol. I will be in attendance for that race. I can't wait to go. I can't wait to bring you guys live content of the race. It's going to be so much fun. I can't wait to see what happens there. There's 3 spots locked up, as Kyle Larson was also able to join Truex and Hamlin into the round of 12 as he clinched enough points last night to advance. There are now 9 spots up for grabs between 13 drivers. So, which one of the 9 drivers out of those 13 will lock themselves in next weekend at Bristol? Which 4 will be left on the outside looking in and thinking, what could have been? What could we have done differently? There's a lot of drama and a lot of excitement entering Bristol, and I cannot wait. It's going to be a wild race. I can't wait for 500 laps around the Roman Coliseum of racing, the last great Coliseum, Thunder Valley, the world's fastest half mile, any name you want to put it at. It's going to be a lot of fun, and I can't wait. So, subscribe, like. Congratulations to Martin Truex Jr. on his 4th win of the season. And also, ladies and gentlemen, enjoy football today as the NFL is officially back. Fans are back and packed into the stands. Can't wait for great action today. Hope your team enjoys a victory today. Can't wait to see football in action. My team plays tomorrow night, so I have to wait another night, but that's fine. But football's back. Can't wait for it. And I'll see you all next weekend in Bristol.